Hey everybody, so thanks very much for coming out to hear us talk today. It's a great honor to be here at beautiful Goa and to be presenting. I do speak a little quickly, so tell me to slow down. I am a New Yorker, so I'm slightly obnoxious and I talk too quickly. But one of the questions I'd like to address right away is, why is the Chief Technology Officer here today? And a lot of people have been asking me that question. I've been a little surprised, but there's a couple different reasons. One is that we believe technology is transforming the customer experience. And another reason is very important for actually my livelihood, which is there's an analyst group in the United States called the Gartner Group. And Gartner predicts that within the next couple of years, the chief marketing officer is going to own more of the technology budget than the chief information or the chief technology officer. And as a services organization, it's really important that we maintain that relationship and help to create a way that technology can change the customer experience. So before we begin, just a quick bit of background around what we mean by transforming the customer experience. So of course, as a CTO, I will talk a lot about technology, and I promise to show some high-level equations on the slides today, just to make sure you do believe I'm a technologist. But we do recognize it's more than just technology. And the equation we're talking about here is it's technology plus media plus creativity. And that creates brand new experiences. So I'm not going to talk a lot about big or long ideas, and I loved Nick's presentation. There's a lot of overlap with what I'm going to talk about today. But what I'm going to talk about is creating those new brand experiences that when your brand acts like a service, creates a relationship with your customers that fits within this modern age. So it's about telling a brand story and providing experiences in a whole new way. So media, in the large definition of media, paid, owned, and earned, which oftentimes is really about a lot of data. Because what a touch point means, whether I see a digital advertisement, or I'm on a social experience, or I'm on a mobile device, I'm on a tablet device, I'm on a desktop, but those are all points for you to listen to your customer. Your customer is telling you a story about what they need, what they're interested in, even when they go into a retail store. Plus technology. And technology is made up of a couple different things. One is these new and immersive technologies, which I'll talk about, things like ubiquitous computing and the maker movement, but it's also about this concept of APIs. And what an API is, in a low-level way, it's called an application program interface. But what it really means is it creates a way for you to have your brand and its services interact with anything else. And it also creates a way for you to leverage tools like Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, to provide the fuel for your experience. And we'll talk about how brands can do that. And of course, creativity is paramount and incredibly important. But it's not the only way that brand new experiences are created anymore. It's created through that convergence. And that's what we mean in our upcoming book, Converge. It's about bringing together these disciplines, because it's at that point of friction that innovation, new ideas, and better customer experiences happen. So we have this new palette of fuels our experiences. Media has changed, and in the biggest way it's changed is it's a two-way dialogue. So I no longer can just speak to a customer. So like in Nick's example, that hashtag is another way for the customer to talk back and to help us understand that. The consumer, what technology has enabled more than anything else, is the consumer has an incredibly strong voice. And creativity can come from anywhere. It can come from a developer sitting in the corner of his office, or it can come from a media planner, a creative director, or media. And so that brand idea doesn't just sit in an ivory tower anymore. It comes from anywhere. And we believe it's at that intersection, at that convergence, where business strategy and insight comes. That's where the idea for Nike Plus and Nike Fuel came from, is that these different disciplines and different skill sets come together. That friction resulted in these brand new insights and creativity. So what do we mean in this book when we're talking about this? And this book is really a culmination of 15 years of what Razorfish has tried to do. From the start, we hired technologists, we hired creative, we hired media and advertising teams. All of that, we believed, was what drove this new world of digital and this disruption of technology. So the convergence of technology, media, and creativity allows us to imagine, create, and enable customer experiences like never before. And that's the exciting point where we're at. So if you looked at that chart that Nick showed earlier, where you see the inflection point for Facebook, for example, it had a very linear growth curve. But then when they used technology to open up their APIs, so the Facebook like button or the Facebook login could get used anywhere else, all of a sudden you've seen this huge growth in their capabilities. So what we want to help our brands understand is how they can evolve their businesses to deliver on these new customer experiences, to operate within this new world of convergence where silos don't matter anymore, where a single discipline doesn't rule the world. And we find, because every good presentation has to have 5 principles, is that there are 5 principles. And what we hope to do today is to help you understand how you need to change your thinking, and then also how you need to change your organization. And we'll show you some examples of rich, brand new experiences of brands as a service and how that can manifest its way in a successful relationship with your customer. So the first 2 principles that I want to talk about, which is what technology really helped to enable in this new age, is you need to put the customer at the center. And so aligning your organization around the customer at the center, as opposed to aligning your organization around hitting a target of how much media you're going to buy. That target doesn't put your customer at the center, it puts your job at sending out a whole new set of media. And what follows from that is thinking of your brand as a service. Because when you're providing a value, when you're providing a service, customers are going to want to interact with you. So those are the 2 most important principles that you need to ask yourself before you embark on any new experience. So your organization must be structured around the customer. And that's both in the marketing and advertising team and the technology team. So if your technology team still thinks their organization structure means building out the next ERP or SAP installation, then they're missing the point. They're organized incorrectly. Their job should be structured around providing a service to the customer. And maybe that service is commerce. And that opportunity for commerce is what they should be thinking about, but it should be commerce that's focused on the customer. And then what you get with digital more than any other time before in history is data based on actual activity. And so now when I put something out, when I launch a new brand experience, that becomes the starting point. And why that's the starting point is because my job isn't done then. That's when I start my job. Because I look at data, I measure how well the interaction is succeeding, I measure where I want to continue to invest in that new brand experience and where I want to stop. In the traditional, in the old world, after you launched, your job was done because you couldn't change anything. But now I have consumers that whether I like it or not, they're going to tell me when I launch if things work. So a great example of a digital brand. So who's familiar with the Netflix brand? Does everybody know the Netflix? Good. So they're a little bit more well-known. Hopefully they'll go around the world a little more strongly. So Netflix tried to change their business strategy maybe it was a year and a half or 2 years ago. And what they tried to do was to change their business. So their business is comprised of 2 main organizational units. One unit that puts these little DVDs into an envelope and mails them out. People watch them, send them back, and then you get the next item on your queue. That's one part of the business. The other part of the business is their streaming video. And that's where you can watch any television show or movie that they have the rights to online, right, through any device, anywhere. Now, as people would expect, what's the growing part of their business? It's the streaming business. More and more people are streaming content because it's easier. And DVDs are very buggy, right? They come, they're scratched, they don't work well. It's not when I want it, when I need it. And so they said, okay, this is how I'm going to change my business. I'm going to change my business to align with what's growing. So they set up 2 new units. They told customers that you would have to create 2 different logons. You would pay more money. And there would be this new business called Quickster, and then this old business called Netflix that delivered DVDs. So what do you think the reaction was to that, right? It wasn't good, right? To say the least. So the consumer's voice came out very quickly and very loudly that this is not something they wanted to do. And they had to listen to that consumer voice. Netflix shed that strategy, stayed with where the consumer was at their center and things were working well for their consumer. And today, this is still how they run their business. And there are businesses still enormously successful. On any evening in the United States, over 20% of all internet traffic goes through Netflix, right? So by putting their consumer at the center, they can stay focused on what's important. So how does technology reinvent the customer experience for a travel airline? We first started working with Delta a couple of years ago, where our client, Bob Cuppins, who came over from Target, had a very retailer mindset. And one thing he understood was that the experience of travel is difficult, right? There's delays. I sit in a small little aluminum tube. There's a lot of challenges there. But there's an enormous amount of brand touch points, whether I'm waiting in the waiting area at the airport to board my plane, or I'm on the kiosk, or I'm on my mobile device, or I'm on my desktop. So he understood I need to take a 360-degree view of that customer and delight them at every touch point. So now they've added, in the United States, there's extra power outlets at all of the Delta terminals. The kiosk is a rich, simpler experience. When I go to check in, I have my mobile device. I don't have to print anything out. And so what we did was help create a strategy which took a 360-degree view of that consumer so that we could help delight them. And this video shows some of our work. What was exciting about working with Delta is that this was a very big launch for them. It included a lot of these different elements. Of course, it was very iterative. As we launched, we would test and learn. But since the launch, all of the metrics are up. There's increased sales. There's increased sales for just direct flights, as well as increased sales for their new offerings, like hotels and cars. So all of this was really important. There's a lot of talk in the industry right now around this concept of responsive design, a single design that across all your different devices. But I think what's much bigger than just saying responsive design is a contextual responsive design. So if I'm waiting online to check out, or to check into my flight, make it easy for me to check in. Don't just think about a single experience I'm going to push that's responsive on all touch points, but it's contextual based on what I know about you, where you're standing, what time of day it is it raining out? These are all contextual elements that data and technology can offer for a better customer experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about ubiquitous computing, the maker movement, and the Internet of Things. And at its heart, what that means is every physical touch point, every retail touch point can now have a digital presence. There's the ability for me to take any technology and give it a Wi-Fi address or an IP address so that it can have its own voice on the internet. One of my favorite examples of this is the work we've done at Audi Cities. Another great example that's really far out there and kind of weird is something that launched at CES this year. It's called the haptic fork. So as you're eating, this fork now has the ability to measure how many times you raise the fork up to your mouth, and it'll start vibrating if you're eating too quickly or if you've eaten too much that day. So it's a crazy idea. No one would have thought that possible. Probably doesn't seem like the greatest idea. Maybe it will be, I don't know. But the point is the possibilities are endless, and we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. And so with Audi Cities, we launched in Piccadilly Circus right before the Olympics, the world's first carless showroom. And what that meant was staying true to the Audi brand, which means advancement through technology is a very strong promise of the Audi brand. And what we did is we used technology to create this, almost magical experience that allows consumers to get out of that car salesman routine where you're standing on one side of the desk and the salesperson is standing on the other side of the desk. That makes it really difficult to envision and dream about your vehicle. But with this carless showroom, we were able to create this rich, immersive experience using Microsoft Kinect technologies, the gesture-based technologies, NFC, RFC, and some would contend, well, did that depersonalize or dehumanize the experience? Well, we actually think technology helped that experience to become more personal and more human. And here's a quick video on Audi Cities. And you can go to Piccadilly Circus and check it out for yourself. So what you can see is that the technology created this rich, immersive experience and really got that cumbersome process out of the way. And the results are outstanding. We've recently rolled it out to Beijing as well as in London, and it's quickly becoming, these showrooms are quickly becoming very strong performing dealerships. So the other key principle we like to talk about is thinking about your brand as a service, not just a one-way dialogue. Now that your brand has a voice, now that your brand can make difficult choices, skip past your commercials, whatever it can do, the consumer can do anything very, very strongly. But if you think as a service, it's going to bring your customers back because you're providing value and it's creating a reason for your brands to interact with you. So as budgets move to these new worlds of technology-enabled experiences, you have to be a service because of all the choice that a customer has. So you're no longer in the business of selling stuff, you're fulfilling consumer needs, which drives more sales. So one of the great case studies that comes to mind is some work that Kellogg's recently did around the Special K brand, or with the My Plan for Special K. And what My Special K enables consumers to do is to log onto a website or a mobile app and configure the plan they want to get more fit. So what now Special K has created is an always-on interaction with their customers. So their customers are turning to the mobile phone application in the morning, in the evening, during lunch to figure out, well, what should I eat? And we made it very highly customizable and easy to approach. So if you're a vegetarian versus an omnivore, you have that choice, and we'll customize the plan for you. And the way we were able to do that is internally, we made all of these services that create a new plan an API. So once you make all of those services an API, you can act like brands like Amazon. And what you can do is quickly create an experience on a mobile device, on a tablet device, on a desktop device, but you're still using those same services. So regardless of where the brand interacts or where the customer interacts with the brand, they get that same experience. And so this video shows you what that experience is all about.
Weight management is a difficult and often lonely journey. For decades, the Special K 2-week challenge has helped millions of women lose weight. It also sold a lot of product, but that's where the relationship started to fade. So Special K reached out to women and learned that we couldn't get the relationship we wanted without giving them what they truly needed: long-term plans. So that's what we did. Introducing My Special K, a flexible new platform built around her, considering how she feels and how she lives. Instead of focusing on the struggle, My Special K focuses on the positive gains that come from feeling and looking her best. She can customize her experience based on her needs, with ongoing goal-based plans, nutritionist-created recipes, helpful shopping lists, and progress journals. And no matter where she is, she can access My Special K to help her stay on track. The expanded community offers even more ways to engage. She can get encouragement from others who relate and access more relevant brand content, like Tracy's Journey, a web series following a real woman through the challenge. To encourage signups, TV spots and in-store displays encouraged women to think beyond losing pounds to those positive gains that come from success. And targeted digital media spoke to feelings about weight loss during the resolution season. The results have far exceeded last year's performance. For the first time ever, half of our users are opting for longer-term plans. And the longer a woman engages with a plan, the more she'll spend on Special K products. And this is just the beginning. The global community will keep evolving, just like the women it supports. With My Special K, women are finding out what they have to gain when they lose.
So you could see in that case study, we talked a lot about the metrics and what we came away with. But you saw that it was a budgeting change, right? So you saw we had to put more budget into the experience itself and into that consumer two-way dialogue. So you saw the integration across all the different paid, owned, and earned, and touch points, and this complex, rich digital experience that keeps that relationship with the brand. Another great brand that shows this is Zappos. So are folks familiar with Zappos? I don't think it's a global brand yet. Okay, so I'll talk a quick second about Zappos. Zappos has always been well known for one thing, and it's putting the customer at the center and outstanding customer service. From very simple things like always picking up the phone on the second ring, or from making it incredibly easy for people to send back shoes. So you can buy 5 pairs of shoes, pick the ones that work best from you, and it's free to send back the rest, as well to the extreme. So there's these amazing anecdotes that you'll read in social media around how a customer service representative left his desk, picked up a pair of shoes, drove them to the best man at a wedding who had lost his suitcase or forgotten his shoes, right? And so that has created a huge brand halo effect that shows that putting your customer at the center is going to give you that return on investment. And the most important metric is, obviously, this creates loyal customers, and loyal customers purchase 75% more than other customers. And Zappos continues to be a great brand, and a brand that operates on their own. So it's a great book. I highly recommend it. Delivering Happiness is Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, how he talks about how they put the customer at the center. Very quickly, it sounds like a lot of people have talked about Nike Fuel and Nike Plus. What's interesting, I'll talk about what's interesting about it from a technology perspective. what Nike did to help create an ecosystem around Nike Plus is they opened up the API. So there's a constellation of these different little native apps and experiences around the data that you can get out of this technology. And so that fuels the brand, it fuels more customers, it fuels more interaction, and it allows your technology to live on more than just the Nike app that comes with the technology. Another great example is Red Bull. Red Bull and the Stratos campaign. And the question came up a little bit earlier around, well, I have to create content that changes the budget. Well, changing the budget to align where your customers are makes a lot of sense. And obviously Red Bull believes that. They have a team of 450 people who are creating content and entertaining their customers and interacting with their customers every day. Okay, so we've talked about the principles, how you need to change your marketing thinking so that you can have a technology-enabled customer experience. Now, there's 3 principles on how you can change your organization. Number 1 is reject silos. Marketing, technology, and creativity are no longer discrete problems. They can't sit within their own little corner of the office. No matter how much my technology director or my technology architect doesn't want to interact with the creative director, he has to, and I make sure he does. And a great example around breaking down silos, so you break down silos around disciplines, but you also need to break down silos around business units. So a great example of an organization doing that is Staples. Their goal was to create a 360-degree view of the customer using data. And what people don't realize, Staples is a very large office products company in the US, very big retail presence. So they have a retail business unit, but they're also the 2nd largest e-commerce site in the US, right behind Amazon. So incredibly powerful reach. And they have an enormous amount of data. They have their Staples CRM program and frequent buyer programs. They have an enormous amount of advertising, media, and website data. And all of that creates a 360 view customer. If you reject the silos that data lives in, you put it into a single view of the customer. And that's what we did. We took advertising data, which is the really big data, right? There's trillions of rows of impressions where people have seen traditional media advertising like a display ad. We have the website behavior, which is what shows people purchased, what pages they navigate, what products they are looking at. And then we have the CRM data, which says, what's the last product you purchased? When you put that data together, you get an enormous amount of segmentation. So traditional marketing thinking, 5, 10 demographic segments, it doesn't apply. We put this data into one place. We ended up with 39,000 segments that we algorithmically created. So now you need to change the way you approach your customer interactions because you have to listen to that data. That data is your customers telling you what's important to them. Another way your organization needs to change is you need to start acting like a startup. And that's pretty obvious because if you don't act like a startup and put your customer at the center, somebody else will, a competitor will. And one of the best ways to think about that is the point around the launch being the starting point. So in software development, there's this methodology called Agile. And what it does is it breaks down the way we traditionally build software into lots of small iterations. And the reasons you want to break things down into iterations is if you're not iterating, if you're looking at the launch as your starting point, you're not listening to your customer. Because when you launch, that's when the customers give you feedback, and that's when you iterate and change what you launched. You have there's not a focus group, there's your customers, and they're going to tell you about your brand, whether you like it or not. Whether you think your idea was right or not, you're going to hear from it, whether it's a traditional media or new world. So I'm not going to talk about this video, because this next video is a great video of how you need to react in an always-on, startup-like approach. So are people familiar with the Smart USA brand? Or the Smart Car brand, I should say. Smart Car is a division of Mercedes. It's these tiny little cars. And it makes it hard to be successful, as you can imagine, in the United States, where we have these massive SUVs that they haven't stopped getting bigger. Even with gas prices going up, they're still getting bigger. And now this little tiny car is trying to be successful in that type of thinking. And this is a great case study on how you can engage your customers in that environment.
When you're the smallest car in America, people talk a lot of shit about you on Twitter. So how do you change that? You fight their shit talking with some of your own. We started responding to some of the haters and found one who took a shot at Smart's perceived lack of toughness. But what many don't know is that Smart's unique Tritium safety cell can withstand 9,000 pounds. So we did the math. We found that pigeons produce 25 pounds of poop per year, which means divide 25 pounds by 365 days and you get 0.068 pounds per day, divided by approximately 37.5 poops per day, and the mass of a single pigeon poop comes to 0.002 pounds. So take the 9,000 pounds of force divided by the mass of a single pigeon poop, and you'd need the waste of 4.5 million pigeons to waste a Smart. But what about the bigger birds? The numbers on turkeys and emus weren't as easy to find, so we called some friendly farmers and got the stats right from the source. We put it all together and sent our reply. Then the shit hit the fan. Our jokester blogged about it. His post got picked up by Reddit, where it hit the #1 position twice. The next morning, it was making headlines around the world.
Hey, makers of the smart car are winning a Twitter war, and they're using toilet humor to do so.
In less than 3 days, we generated over 22 million impressions, increased our Twitter mentions by over 2,000%, and as searches for Tritium safety cells spiked over 300%, the world discovered the truth about Smart's safety. Now, Smart's unique attitude is changing the minds of more and more critics while setting the new standard for how brands should interact in social. Best of all, we're turning the shit-talking into respect.
So as you can see, the campaign, everyone claps for that campaign. I don't know why. It's a lot of fun. But the point is, we labeled this. We had a set of 24/7 people who were very quickly able to respond to this. And the strategy was humor the haters. And it worked brilliantly. And it resulted in people learning more about how safe this car actually is. Because it really is. The Tritium safety cell is real. And so it drove all this new traffic to the website. Fortunately, we host the website on a cloud technology, and it was able to take the traffic no problem. And we've now increased education about the safety of this vehicle and how important it is. Another great example of acting like a startup is this company called Square. So Square's in the United States. It's a mobile payments company. And they created a whole new innovative way to accept payments. Not sponsored by any of the big payment providers. They took a rapid prototyping approach, and it's kind of unbelievable that the co-founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, he runs this Square company during the day, in the morning until noon at US time, and in the afternoon he runs Twitter, which is hard to fathom. But what he and his team did is they rapidly prototyped using Maker technology, this way that could read the magnetic card on your credit card, translate that to audio signals, and send it to your phone. And this little, simple, startup-like device has transformed the way people take payments. So you'll be in cabs in the United States, you'll be at a flea market, and for $5, a local small provider can buy this little card, and they could start accepting mobile payments. So just an amazing disruption in the industry, and now Starbucks has recognized that and made a huge investment in Square, and even more innovations are starting to show up in Starbucks stores, even beyond just making it easy to pay. So the last principle, which we think is very important. So in Converge, in the book, we talk a lot about how interdisciplinary skills need to come together to create innovation. But it's not just about disciplinary skills, it's about diversity of all types. So it's diversity of cultures, it's gender diversity. All of this moves your business incredibly strongly, and you have to think this way. And that's why I'm here today, is that we see the value and the strength of cultural and gender and skills diversity. There's a great, so we were built this way, from the start at 1995, but we always questioned it. I came from a traditional system integrator, writing code and just pushing it out, and my code never got used because we didn't have any creative and user experience people. We did a good job. I would write the code and I'd get it done on time, but nobody would ever use it. And so I went to a new organization where I had to sit next to a creative director, and At times it's uncomfortable. You don't think the same way. You have different priorities. One person thinks it's about the big idea, another person thinks it's about writing code. But it's at that intersection that innovation happens, right? And that's where the world needs to move towards. And so we've always questioned it. Like, should I go back and just write code, or is it good that I work in this, not friction-free environment? And there's a great book that came out from an author in the United States, Franz Johansson. And the book's called The Medici Effect. And this is how he talks about convergence. When you step into an intersection of fields, disciplines, of cultures, you can combine existing concepts into a large number of extraordinary new ideas. And what it means is at that intersection, you innovate and you create business growth. And growth is what creates happiness and keeps everybody moving forward. And so it's a great book. I highly recommend it. But, well, does that really impact the bottom line, right? Because when you're working at that intersection, you also fail a lot, right? There's a lot of times where these ideas and concepts don't work. Well, between 2008 and 2010, companies with more diverse teams were actually the top performers. And this is a McKinsey study. McKinsey's one of the oldest consulting organizations in the world. What does that mean? Financially, how does it change? And this is from the study. Your return on equity, 53%. Your margin increases by 14%. So these companies that embrace diversity are winning. And then you need to incentivize collaboration within the company functions. What that means is you need an evangelist who's brave enough to live in this world where there is friction, where there is ideas that are being pushed against each other in a way that is sometimes uncomfortable. And that won't succeed unless you incentivize that and you find somebody brave enough to work through that. So a great example of, and I think I'll go through the video really quickly, is collaborating not just internally, but collaborating with your customers. And this is a great example of how Unilever did that with Axe.
In 2002, Axe created the US body spray category. 10 years later, it must fight to stand out and protect its market share. Enter Anarchy, the brand's first male-female paired fragrance. Axe's broadcast campaign was about the chaos unleashed by the body sprays. Our job was to bring this fantasy to life in digital channels. Our idea was born from an unexpected medium. We embraced a genre that has fueled young people's fantasies for decades, and then reinvented it for a generation raised on the real-time web. Introducing the first comic book written by and starring its readers. Serialized in real time over 4 months, the story of how the Anarchy fragrances take over the nation was shaped by the suggestions and votes of consumers. The content was created by the cutting-edge team at Aspen Comics and writer Scott Lobdell of X-Men and Iron Man fame. They produced a new page every 2 days, as each chapter took the story to crazy new heights, powered by the passion and imagination of our consumers. And when a consumer made a really good suggestion, they soon found themselves drawn into the action. Within 2 days of launch, Anarchy the graphic novel had been featured in dozens of publications and sites and driven thousands of tweets. The site experience on YouTube had been visited over 1 million times. And engagement records for the brand had been broken across the board. Anarchy is now the best-selling body spray in the United States. And in 2012, Axe has had the biggest increase in market share across the entire category. Anarchy the graphic novel is more than a storytelling experiment with a happy ending. It's the beginning of an exciting new chapter for the Axe brand.
So a great example of how you can work with the consumers and use their voice to help create premium content and premium experience. So the last thing I wanted to talk about very quickly is this concept of a maker movement. So we talked a little bit about ubiquitous computing, the Internet of Things. What does that mean? Well, there's two amazing new trends that are changing that. One is 3D printers. So 3D printers have started to become very affordable. And what more important than just getting a 3D printer and putting it in your home or putting it in your office is now there are files of every physical object out there. So like the MP3 freed the CD and freed the music world, I can now download a file of this case, I can change it, and then I can print it at home. So it's changed the cycle of manufacturing, and it's given us a whole new palette of which to be creative, right, and create new things. And the Square example I gave earlier, they actually 3D printed early versions of the cases that would wrap around the technologies. And the other part that is enabling this is the world of ubiquitous computing. So that is really the ability to take a computer processing unit, surround it with any number of sensors you want. So everything from what you would think about in your phone, an accelerometer, a barometer, anything. There's lots of other sensors. And I can very easily and quickly program them. So just like the HTML made web programming simple, technologies like Arduino and Raspberry Pi are making physical device programming simple. And so Wired has talked about this a lot. Chris Anderson, the editor of Wired, recently came out with a book on this topic, and he just quit Wired after being there for 12 years to run this company. And so this covers a picture of Lemore Freed, who runs a very rapidly growing startup in New York City called Adafruit, which is teaching the world how to use this technology, which is just like HTML, to create brand new physical experiences and sensors. So the point is, it's more than technology. It's technology, media, and creativity to create these new brand experiences. So thanks very much. I hope this was helpful. And the book is coming out in 2 weeks. It's convergebook.com.
Just when I thought the iPad is coming my way, there are some questions that have quickly come out here. One of them is very interesting. As CTOs are learning to be CMOs, what should CMOs, brand managers, etc., learn to be CTOs? So basically he's asking, is you're learning our business, do we need to learn yours?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting about people in the CTO role, and this isn't true all the time, so I would say it applies to CTOs and CMOs, is immersing yourselves in these new technologies to create a deeper understanding so that you can get ahead of the trajectory. So it's easy to look at the history and the direction that the forecasts are headed. Like that example with e-commerce, like the example of adoption of smartphones. I know where things are headed, so I can't print out my emails anymore as a CMO. I have to use my smartphone to interact with my emails. Those are ways that a CMO needs to change, and it means immersing yourselves with these new technologies. Otherwise, you're not going to understand what it means when you allocate budgets differently.
Another question asks, what comes first, technology or the idea?
Well, I think we would like to say that they come together, right? And that's why I keep going back to this intersection, this convergence, where the idea is informed by creative, the idea is formed by technology. And sometimes I struggle even with the name idea. Like, I'm not sure idea applies to creating a website that helps you build your plan to get more fit. I don't know if I'd call that an idea, or I would call that a brand experience. So, but at the end of the day, what I think is more important is that you're getting that intersectional thinking between the different disciplines to produce that new experience, I would say.